Have you ever watched a movie and felt so strongly about it only to realize almost everyone else completely disagrees with you on it? Well, let's talk about Lisa Frankenstein. What's up, my dude? Your friendly neighborhood Tony here, and as I do with all my movie reviews, I'm gonna give you a little bit of information about Lisa Frankenstein, who made it, what it's about, all that good stuff. Then I'll go into the things I did and did not like about the movie, the pros and cons. And finally, I'll let you know who I think Lisa Frankenstein is for, if anyone. If that kind of thing sounds cool to you and you want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies that are coming out in theaters and on streaming, make sure you subscribe. All right, let's get into the deets. According to IMDb, Lisa Frankenstein is a, and I quote, coming-of-rage love story about a teenager and her crush who happens to be a corpse. After a horrific set of circumstances brings him back to life, the two embark upon a journey to find love and happiness and a few body parts. Lisa Frankenstein is pretty obviously a horror comedy, and it's written by Diablo Cody. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's the person that wrote Juno, which I think she won an Academy Award for, as well as Jennifer's Body, which is a bit of a cult classic. And it's being directed by Zelda Williams, who is Robin Williams' daughter. And this is, of course, her directorial debut. Now, Lisa Frankenstein is set to be in theaters this weekend, so probably about the time that you're watching this video. And it's rated PG-13 for, of course, some blood and violence, as well as some sexual material, drinking, drug use, and a bit of language here and there. And the movie runs about an hour and 40 minutes-ish, which I think is the perfect length for a horror or comedy movie like this. The movie stars Kathryn Newton, who you might know from being in the Ant-Man movies. She played Cassie Lang, Ant-Man's daughter. You also have Cole Sprouse, who plays the Frankenstein's monster in the movie. He was in The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, as well as in Riverdale, where he played Jughead recently. Alongside them is Liza Soberano, who I was not familiar with until I saw this movie. She plays Kathryn Newton's stepsister, who's also a cheerleader and just like a really bubbly personality. The parents are played by Carla Gugino and Chrest, who you've definitely seen in probably a bunch of other movies and shows before. All right, so before we get into my pros and cons, let me tell you kind of my expectations coming into the movie so you know where I was coming from. For one, I love horror comedy movies. It's one of my favorite genres. So whether it's Tucker and Dale versus Evil, Cabin in the Woods, Shaun of the Dead, which is another classic, horror comedy is one of those genres that if you do it well, I am absolutely gonna love it. I also really enjoyed Juno and Jennifer's Body, although I do think that those are the only two Diablo Cody movies that I've seen personally, but both definitely got thumbs up for me. Now, of course, being that this is Zelda Williams' directorial debut, I haven't seen anything that she's done before, but I will say in all fairness, I am a huge Robin Williams fan. He is a massive part of my childhood, so of course I want to see his daughter succeed. Overall, I'll say I was really looking forward to this movie. I did try to keep my expectations in check though, being that this is a directorial debut. It's really hard to come out of the gate swinging, so I will say my expectations were a bit low and I was just looking to have a good time. But did I? Well, let's get into the pros. So the very first thing that jumped out to me about this movie is the visual style and the overall way the movie looked. Whether it's with the 80s costumes and the way that everyone was doing their hair and dressing up, that was really authentic and fun, or the makeup that they had on Cody Sprouse, which changed throughout the movie as he became more and more lifelike, or some of the set design was really fun and unique. And they even had some animated sequences, especially towards the beginning and end of the movie. So overall, the visual style I thought was really, really good. Definitely one of the standout strong points about the movie. Aside from just how it looked, I really enjoyed how it sounded in some ways as far as the soundtrack of the movie. Of course, it takes place in the 80s, or at least it seems to, and they have so many classic bangers on the soundtrack, so props to them for the music choices. Also, I'll compliment them on the casting. You know, for your first time directing a movie, it's going to be really hard to get some top tier celebrities, actors and actresses in your movie, and I think that everyone that they got here is really talented. Now, of course, you can say that's because of Zelda's name and her father's history, but for whatever reason, whether or not it's nepotism, the fact of the matter is it's never a bad idea to get talent in front of or behind the camera. Also, of course, being a horror comedy, there were definitely a few moments throughout the movie that made me chuckle. And in fact, the audience that I saw the movie with was laughing a number of times throughout the movie. But of course, comedy is completely subjective. It's one of the most subjective art forms out there. So what works for some might not work for others. And to be fair, there is plenty that I did not like about this movie, so let's get into that. But before we do, I want to let you know that this video is sponsored by you. That's right, I'm just a small independent channel here without any big corporate sponsors or anything like that, so just by watching the video, you're really helping me out. If you want to be super dope and show your support in the easiest possible way, do me a solid and like the video, and maybe drop a comment down below. Let me know what are some of your favorite horror comedies of all time. I think for me, it might be American Psycho if that counts as a horror comedy. I think it does. You can also now join as a channel member if you want to help support me financially, or just subscribe for free if you want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies that are coming out. Either way, whatever you do, I appreciate it. All right, on to the cons. And this is the part in the review where everyone flames me in the comments, but I gotta keep it real. What's the point of reviewing a movie if I'm not gonna be 100% honest with you? And this movie, Lisa Frankenstein, to me, felt so clearly like a first time at bat for a director. And now here's the thing, most people with their first feature film, it's probably gonna be some small student film or a very low budget movie that they throw together with their friends. It's not gonna be a $13, $14, $15 million movie put out by a major studio when you don't really have much experience directing feature films prior to that. And so taking someone who doesn't have a ton of experience and putting them in a situation like this is really, really risky. And for me, there's a lot of reasons why it just didn't work. For one, and maybe this is more of an issue with the writing than it is with the directing, but every character in this movie was completely two-dimensional and just a flat-out trope or stereotype of the type of character that they were trying to portray. There was really almost no depth or interest or intrigue in any of the characters, except for maybe one and barely. Also, and this is more of a directing issue, there were a number of scenes throughout the movie that served no real narrative purpose at all. And the way that some of these scenes were edited was done in such a clunky way. I'll give you an example. When you're having two characters have a dialogue back and forth in a movie, normally you'll have different coverage with your camera. So you'll have one shot that's on one character, kind of like their solo shot. Then you'll have another shot that's on the other character, and then maybe a wide shot of both of them. That's a very simple setup that you can have. And one of the reasons why you'll do that is so that you can cut out some of the silence in between. You can pick and choose different takes depending on how the lines were delivered. It just allows you to edit around it better, to make everything flow better and to get the best shots and the best delivery out of each character. And there were a number of moments throughout the movie where they just didn't do that. They would hold on a shot for too long. There would be dead air in between dialogue. There were honestly just a number of what I would consider to be amateurish mistakes in the way that the movie was shot and edited and the way that some of the scenes were chosen. And another thing is, look, like I said, the actors and actresses that are in this movie are all very good at their jobs. And so when you have scenes in a movie where it appears as if they're doing very poorly, I tend to believe that it's not necessarily their fault. And ultimately, it isn't, right? It's up to the director to get the best performance out of their actors and also to choose the best takes so that the movie flows together and it all makes sense. There's also a fine line between making fun of a genre and becoming the thing that you're making fun of. So for example, I recently saw the movie Argylle, and it tries to do a similar thing there, where a lot of the movie is making fun of a lot of the tropes that take place in these kind of spy thriller movies. And with this movie, similarly with Argylle, it kind of has an issue with walking that line between making fun of something and being the thing it's making fun of. You know, some of the horror comedies that I mentioned earlier do this, but they do it so well. So for example, a movie like Tucker and Dale versus Evil or Cabin in the Woods, if you watch that, they're riffing on the tropes that take place in these movies, but they're doing it so well that you're laughing along with them as opposed to laughing at them. The last big thing that I'll touch on with this is the main character, Kathryn Newton's character. She was completely unlikable in this movie. Her character was just so dark and different and mysterious, which is annoying. But above that, she had no redeeming qualities whatsoever. You know, with a movie, one of the most basic fundamental aspects of storytelling is to have a protagonist and an antagonist, right? We all know that. And the protagonist is there to move the story along and to get us from point A to point B. And us as the viewer or the reader or the watcher, we want to feel like we want the protagonist to get to whatever the next part of the story is. We want to see them succeed. And even if your protagonist is a straight up villain, they have to have certain qualities that are redeeming about them. You have to feel bad for them. Like in the example of the Joker movie, he's a straight up monster, but we kind of feel for him. And there's countless other movies like that. And the fact of the matter is here, for me, I did not care at all about this character. And in fact, I didn't want to see her succeed. If anything, I cared more about her stepsister character in the movie. She was way more redeemable. And so again, I fall back on, look, this is not all Zelda Williams' fault, right? I think she has potential to be a great director down the road, but the studio and the producers and whoever else was responsible for piecing this all together, in my opinion, kind of failed her here. So, okay, you know how I feel. who do I think Lisa Frankenstein is for? Well, look, this movie is pretty clear about the movies that it pulls inspiration from. So if you're a big fan of Tim Burton movies, if you like Edward Scissorhands, or if you like Beetlejuice or Encino Man, which I know is not a Tim Burton movie, or Death Becomes Her, any of those kind of movies, then I think you might enjoy this one. And I say might because I enjoy all those movies and I did not enjoy this one. So it's not 100%. And look, a lot of people are excited about this one. Even some of the reviews that I've seen online from people that I respect the opinions of, a fair bit of them like the movie. But I guess if you're sensitive to cringe, or if you're really looking for the next great horror comedy, this ain't it, Chief. But if Lisa Frankenstein sounds like something you might be interested in, check it out in theaters this weekend. If you've already seen it, definitely let me know what you think in the comments below. And of course, if you just want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies that are coming out in theaters and on streaming, make sure you subscribe. All right, my dude, I'll catch you in the next one. Be good.